Hey there, Jeremy here. I am excited to step into sharing a little bit more about one of my favorite tools, breathwork, in the context of meditation. I'm going to talk about why it's important, how they work together, and share a little story about when I really found the benefit of that in my regular life. So, to start off, the idea of meditation for me is really simple and was expressed to me as not so much getting away from my mind or stopping my mind or that no mind or anything that has to do with the resistance of thought or thinking, more of a discipline of bringing this beautiful tool into the present moment. And that modality of the breath is so wonderful because it creates what Ram Dass calls the single pointedness, which I love that idea, that my mind is so good at being really focused on something individual. And so with the breath, it creates this focus point for my mind to be internalized. So bringing my mind into awareness of my body is such a beautiful and simple practice. And so my practice, the way that it goes, and then I'll share the story of when I knew that this was really helping me, is that I relax my shoulders and my neck and my head in a seated position. And then I breathe into my belly. So most of us breathe into our chest, which is really shallow breathing, and are oftentimes very anxious breathing. With the belly breath, it brings some relaxation and specifically brings us from sympathetic nerve tone, which is like a triggered state, into parasympathetic nervous tone, which is where I'm the one that gets to decide what's happening and what it means. And so that breath of relaxation brings that practice to help me recognize that the thing that I think is happening is just a part of the experience. So, relaxed belly, I breathe in through my nose and out through my nose. And I breathe in for 5, hold for 1, and then I breathe out for 5 and hold for 1. And it's less about the structure of the breathing and more about the practice of the awareness of my mind, of being present with my breath. So there's a very subtle distinction between the two. It begins with my focusing on the counting. The beginning of that practice is very simply being present with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold for 1, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold for 1, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold for 1, and that's the structure of it, right? That's the very yang or the masculine or the container that we get to experience. The experience of the container or the yin side of it, the flow of divine, is that actual electromagnetic current, the experience, the feeling of the bringing my mind into my body's awareness of the breath, is how it feels going in through my nose and how it feels traveling down my esophagus and how it feels to relax my belly. And so that practice of being present with the vulnerability, of being authentic, of letting go of any sort of analysis of the thing, of just being present with how I'm doing it, how I'm experiencing it in this right now. And I love that as the practice of, instead of stopping my mind, but the practice of, oh, my mind is off thinking about my chores, or my mind is off thinking about this meeting I have tomorrow, or dinner that I need to, or I gotta pee, or whatever is in my body or in my mind that is not about either one of those, but coming into the presence with both of them. That single pointedness of mind gets to practice that breath in order to practice this coming into the present moment of awareness of what's passing through here. So I hope that is helpful. I would love to hear any questions about that simple modality. And before I let you go, I want to tell the quick story of when I realized that this was helping me. Because this practice of letting go of what I think is happening and being present with what is really useful when we get into a space of being caught in what I think is happening, or typically something bad that I think is happening. So one time I was out in nature here in Austin, and I was putting my hammock up next to a creek. And I had my journal out, and I had my ukulele out, and I had all this stuff that was in my hammock, and I was out in the trees next to it. It was beautiful. And I set it up way up this embankment, so there's this overlook several feet down into the creek. And suddenly it started to rain, and I was like, oh my gosh, I guess I'll just close my hammock to keep me from the rain. And it just started pouring. If you've been in a Texas thunderstorm, you know, silly to have expected otherwise. It started pouring, and so of course I'm scrambling, trying to get all my things protected from the rain. And in that moment, I tripped on a branch, and I fell several feet down into the water. And it was in that moment, when I was completely immersed in like the 2 or 3 feet of water, that I remembered my practice of meditation, because my first thought was, this is the great adventure that I'm on. That as I was underwater, I was like, oh my gosh, I've fallen completely into this water. And then to be present with that whole experience of like, okay, I'm safe. I didn't hit a rock. I didn't like break anything. I'm okay. I'm just wet. And of course, I thought about my stuff, and I don't remember in the moment what happened to it, but just like trusting in that moment, it really felt like that first awareness that what I thought was happening, which was definitely happening, that I'm not a slave to that thing, that I can recognize that this is my great adventure, that in that moment, that all of that work of being present with the breath helped me be present with that moment. And so I got up, just stood up. Obviously, I was soaking wet to the bone, grabbed my things, which were a little wet, but not the worst for wear, and nothing really happened. But it was just that space of not being so caught up in the experience of the thing that I didn't like, that I got to be able to be present with the joy that was within it. So I hope that that's helpful. So many blessings. I'd love to hear about any questions or how that practice is working for you.